Welcome to One Insight. My name is Rich Litvin. I grew up in London and I now live in LA. And this is a podcast for extraordinary top performers. You see, I've coached some of the most successful and talented people on the planet. I see what most people cannot see, and I dare to say what most people wouldn't dare to say. And what I know about success is that on the other side of it, it can actually be lonely. You can feel like more of an imposter the more successful you become. And when you're the most interesting person in the room, you're actually in the wrong room. I coach around insight. Life looks one way, something happens, the world looks different, and your entire world changes. It can happen in an instant. And this podcast is called One Insight because a single insight can change everything. Today, you're going to be privy to a deep conversation. Not much coaching going on here, but there's nothing more powerful than a deep conversation. Garrison's a leader, an entrepreneur, a member of my community of coaches and leaders called 4PC. A year or so ago, I told them a story about a coach I know who had a client who wanted to be in a relationship. And he coached this client to write a letter to his future wife, describing her in every aspect of what he wanted to have in her and in the relationship. And I mentioned this story to my community, and Garrison remembered this as he was looking at what he wanted to have next in his relationship. I'll let him tell the story next. But as he tells the story, we start a very honest conversation about relationship between the two of us. It's quite vulnerable for him. He starts to break out in a sweat at some point. And then there comes a moment when I also want to be vulnerable and share about some of the challenges in my relationship that no one ever sees, right? We live in this Instagram famous world where everyone's sharing their highlight reel on Instagram, and we're only ever looking at it when we're at our darkest moments. So we're comparing our most intense moments with everyone else's highlight reel. And we both get real for a moment in different ways around what it's like being in relationship and frustrations about not being in relationship. It was a great conversation, and I think you'll enjoy being on the other side of it, be able to listen in to what two men are having a conversation about around our desires and our frustrations. Enjoy. Hey, Garrison.
Hey, Rich.
I'm looking forward to this because we're going to retell a story about something that happened, and we've actually tried 2 or 3 times to start this episode. I started to tell the story, then you did, and then we took a moment to breathe and slow down. Let's have you tell this story, and then I'll add in any bits that I remember to it, and we'll see where we go from here.
Okay. This is edgy. I had even questioned if I wanted to talk about this during our podcast, but it feels alive. So in February of 2020, we were at the 4PC in Santa Fe. And as we were coming to the end of our week together, we were playing the Hey Yo game. You know, hey yo, does anyone have a connection at Netflix? I want to propose a show. Hey yo, does anyone, connected to Bill Gates or, whatever. And I think I made hey yo history because when it came around to me, what authentically wanted to come through was, hey yo, does anyone know the woman I'm going to marry? Because I'd really like to meet her. And getting a little verklempt even talking about it. And what came as a result of that is, a lot of people had questions and wanted to say things, but you had offered a story and said, basically, consider this, Garrison. Write a letter from 2 years in the future of having been in that relationship for 2 years, looking back on the 2 years of being in the relationship. Write that letter to your partner and share it with us. And so I took that on and I wrote and wrote and wrote until I got it really tight. And then a friend of mine shared with me that it was really good, but she felt like there was attachment in it. And so I rewrote it and realized I needed to write a letter from 2 years in the future of having not met my partner and what that would be like. And so I wrote that and ultimately realized that, if I haven't met my partner in 2 years, I'm not going to be sitting there crying into my soup. I'm going to have an amazing life. I'm going to be so in love with myself. it's like it's gonna be beautiful. And I wrote that letter. And then I realized needed to write a third letter combining the two. And I wrote that one. And, by now several months, not several, but like 3 or 4 or 5 months has gone by. And I didn't know, is it too long? I can't tell anymore. So I put it in a file, left it. In the meantime, completed some old relationships, did a lot of growth and evolution. And here we are 6 months later at the next 4PC, which is now online because of COVID. And as we're coming to the end of that 4PC, it was Parisa actually, who right in like almost the last hour said, "Hey, Garrison, whatever happened with that letter?" And I said, "Oh, well, it's done. I'll share it to the Facebook group." So I shared it to the Facebook group, and a few hours later, I get a message from you saying, and I quote, "Garrison, may we share this?" And I finished that quote in my head, dot, 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 with individual women we think would be good to introduce you to. That was not what you meant. and I,
When
and
I
I,
texted you those words, I
yeah,
meant, may we share this? I have a community on Facebook. I can share it.
yeah, yeah, dot, 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 which is several thousand people across the planet. So several hours later, I pick up my phone and it's exploding with, likes and loves and, messages and friend requests. And I'm like, what? No. Oh, no. I had no idea because this was not intended in my world. This was not intended to be a public letter. And yet, while I was definitely confronted and overwhelmed at first, it was all of a sudden it was like, oh my God, like, okay, Rich just gave me literally a world stage to stand on and say, yeah, this is what I stand for. This is what I believe. This is what I'm here for. And I
Well, we had a
remember,
little text exchange, right? Because you said,
yeah,
oh my God, I think you might have shared it with your whole community on Facebook. And I
yeah,
said, oh my God, I thought that's what you meant when I said, can I share it? And I said, would you like me to take it down? And then
right,
you did a little bit of thinking and made this decision. You know what? If it's happened, let's play it out.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I was, I was, I hadn't come that far just to come that far. And, um, and so it was like, okay, let's let this go. And I had women from all over the world contact me. I remember a woman from Buenos Aires, sending me a note saying, and it started with, "Oh my gosh, I was just having brunch with a friend and I was telling her what kind of relationship I felt I deserved." And her jaw dropped and said, "Oh my gosh, have you read this letter?" And I just read it and I'm writing you. I mean, it was a lot from all over the world. And I did date a woman for a while in Denver, and it was really nice. But ultimately, it wasn't really a match. And so here I am. I'm living on Maui now, and it's been some time since that letter went out, and it feels edgy to me to be speaking about it because there are likely some people listening to the podcast who are in your community who saw the letter and have been curious, like, oh, what happened with that? And there is a sense of like, oh wow, I haven't met someone yet that I'm equally attracted to and feel safe with and feel that um, we've really got something. And in some ways I feel good about the path that I'm on. There's been so much growth and so much evolution, so much learning for me. And at the same time, um, there is a little bit of vulnerability in talking about it and saying like, oh, well, actually, I haven't met someone yet, and maybe there's even like a little bit of embarrassment
Mm,
that comes with that.
yeah.
And so it felt my hands are sweating right now. It felt alive to speak about because it's true and it's it's an authentic truth to share everything that I just did.
Thank you for sharing. Keep
Yeah,
breathing. It's intense, I can tell.
yeah,
And you modeled for me the concept of what I call a created life. You can sit back waiting to see if someone's going to show up, or by chance at an event you go to, you meet the right person, and you took a risk and you shared a letter from the heart that went out. I shared it and other people shared it. And it only went out because that deep truth you spoke to people. I share things all the time on Facebook that nobody shares. It was a testament to who you are and what you wanted to create in your life that it went so wide and got so widely shared. So I do want you to hear that first.
Yes, I agree.
And then there's this moment now, 9-10 months later, where there's this feeling that's coming up of, well, it didn't happen. I'm not with my new wife yet. And I'm imagining some doubt, some shame, some guilt, some embarrassment, some frustration, a mixture of all the above.
Yes. I mean, it's been a longing for me, I think, as you know, for a long time, to be in deep partnership.
Mm.
And a lot of my life has been spent growing beyond and transcending some very difficult uh, patterns, from childhood that I inherited from both my parents. One of the things that makes me so incredible at the work that I do is I'm so empathic and so prolific in my writing and the work that I do. But that also comes with its challenges, in that I really took on both of my parents' like uh, like core patterns in relating, and spent the majority of my life trying to work those out for them, until in the last several years I really started to realize, oh, none of that was mine. I can actually start to um, just really, really be. Um, but I think that as a result of that, um, a relationship has been a long path for me, and b I've had to work harder, I think, than most people to really discern and define and distinguish what a truly evolved relationship looks like. Not that any relationship's ever going to be perfect, but to really see, like, no, this is what I stand for. This is what I'm here for. This is what I'm here to create in a partnership. And it's just taken a really long time.
Yeah. We recorded another podcast episode where I coached you around what's next in your business. And we drew out a distinction around freedom and responsibility, that they're intertwined in your mind, that how do you create a business that doesn't have more responsibility? And if it does take more responsibility to grow the business, then your freedom will be constrained. There's this interplay between the two. And we were looked at by the end of the conversation, how could I have a business that grows and has more impact, and I have more fun and more freedom and more happiness all at the same time? What are the two concepts that interplay when it comes to relationship? You want this beautiful longing for this deep partnership. What's the price that in your mind you pay for deep partnership?
Yeah. Yeah. I totally see the correlation here. Um, I've been moving through. Um, I've definitely been moving through the past several years, um, layers of fear around being, stuck inside of what I grew up inside of, and that's something that I've just been really devoted my life to, like shedding those layers. Um, and I think in some ways there's, maybe just like little remnants of it that still like kind of hold me back a little bit, maybe energetically. Um, but I see that relationship as a high quality freedom, where it's sort of like, yeah, I'm 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 inside of a container of relationship, and yet there's a freedom here, because it's like, great, I'm no longer putting all this energy into looking and longing and um, trying to find that relationship. I can now be here and now create from this place. But I think that,
I'm noticing you haven't answered my question,
okay, let's try it again.
but let me ask it in a different way.
All right.
And you tell me how comfortable you feel to talk about the answer to this question. What was the price your parents paid to be in their relationship?
It's hard for me to answer because I don't think they knew
No,
any
they
better.
didn't. But you could see from the outside. We're all doing the
Sure.
best we can, right?
Yes.
What or
Yes.
let me ask you in a different way. What do you absolutely not want to replicate from their relationship?
Yeah. My father's avoidance of love, my mother's, um, anxious and desperate need for love. Um, and the way those two just collided in a perfect storm that I grew up in the middle of.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, yeah, that's what it would be.
How are you replicating either or both of those patterns?
Uh, it's been a really long journey for me, and in all honesty, and this really does feel vulnerable to talk about.
Mm.
But I grew up um, anxious and avoidant at the same time, and it felt like being torn apart from the inside out. And I really had to find the middle path of if I if I feel all of that anxiousness and I feel all of that avoidance to the point where it no longer has a grip on me because I'm holding it so fully, then there's a middle path. And the last time I took uh, a relationship style test, I was vastly I was vastly in the secure uh, uh, attachment style. I was in the secure attachment style, which feels like such an accomplishment and such an acknowledgement for all the work that I've done in my life. But I think that there may be still some remnants of feeling like, oh, but there's a little bit of fear around, um, you know, uh, there's a little bit of fear around being with someone who's super attached to me, or there's a little bit of longing for what it is that I'm desiring. Um, so I think there is still maybe a little bit of that left, but I feel like a secure relationship person at this point,
Yeah.
nonetheless.
Yeah. So look, first of all, congratulations on all the hard work. That's a lot of deep hard work. And there's work that we do outside of the relationship, and there's the work we do inside the relationship. And that's the most challenging work in my experience. And so, how do we get you to continue this work in the relationship? Because there's a place right now where, purely judging from the evidence that you're not yet in this relationship, there's some part of you that doesn't want that yet.
Yeah, I that's one that I struggle with. I I wonder if it's some part of me that I just haven't fully connected with yet, that it's sort of like, hey, just so you know, it's 2021,
Yeah.
and you know, you're an adult and a great man and all of that. Um,
Well, I mean, Garrison, there's a little child running all of us.
yeah,
I would be most mortified if there was a camera that showed up in my house and was secretly taping me in moments with Monique where I get triggered in relationship, because that's when the little boy inside of me comes out. I get pouty, I get frustrated, I get angry, and that little kid inside of me that never managed to navigate relationships back as a child pops out here. So I'm still doing the work there. I sometimes wonder, I mean, my story. I proposed to Monique 10 days after I met her.
mhm,
And to this day, I wonder, why didn't we just start dating? Why didn't she say to me, you know what, that's lovely, but let's go on a date first? And why didn't I? I was taking a risk at that moment in my life, and so was she. And in some ways, I'm grateful that I did, because I think if I'd waited till this mind was ready to find the right person, I'd be sitting next to you right now saying, where is she? And
yeah,
it's not that the moment I said it, that I got into the perfect relationship. we have our ups and downs. We've had a year of couples therapy throughout the pandemic. It's been great for us. But on a regular basis, that little boy inside of me is showing up in this relationship to this day. It's frustrating sometimes. I can be out there in the world with gravitas and a leader, and the doors close on my home, and this little boy pops up because this is the safest I'll ever be in my home. And when you feel really safe, those old behaviors can come out. And I'm like you, we've done years of men's work, right, between us.
Yeah.
We've led courses on this stuff, and still to this day, this stuff comes up. So I'm grateful that I made that decision to get married quickly, because I'd be writing the same letter as you. I'd be sitting next to you right now. And that isn't the recommendation you propose to the next person you meet 10 days later. But I'm saying I understand it. I completely understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. I think at this point, with the right person, like I'm ready to, I know things will come up in relationship. And I think that there are things that we can't heal. We can't heal those things not in relationship, because relationship is the cauldron that is the container for that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know what else to say right now. I like that we're talking about this, because in some ways it's felt like something I've been sort of like holding inside, and it feels good just to sort of like open up the barn doors and let the air in, and just be with like, yeah, this is where it's at. Yeah.
Yeah. Here's one last piece for you. I don't think you're as different as you think you are. The story that you have about how unique it is, I've got no doubt that was a very unique relationship, your parents' relationship. But each of us were in a unique situation. I was at a David Data event once, and a guy stood up in the room and tried to persuade David that his wife was unlike any other woman that any other men in that workshop were married to. And every guy was laughing, because every one of us thinks we're in this unique relationship with this unique character. And there's truth in that. And at the same time, there's this similarity in all of our stories.
Yeah.
That it's hard to be in relationship. I remember watching, I think it was the TV show Rome, and a warrior gladiator came back from the battles. He'd been fighting for 4 years with Caesar, and he came back, and he went to see his wife, and they made passionate love. And the next day she was asking him to do some of the things around the house, and he went back to war the day after. And it really struck me. It's like, I think that's the story. Relationships so challenging that as men, most of the time, it's easier for us to duck out, to leave. And there's a place where the deepest spiritual path is in relationship. And I see that as part of your spiritual path. You're a deeply spiritual man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So look, it's a bit like our last conversation, where I say sometimes the most powerful coaching tool is to leave somebody simmering. We're here. There's nowhere to go. This isn't about what steps do you take now do you write another letter? Do you do something else? We're in a conversation. And that's where powerful coaching can happen, in a conversation.
Yeah.
And it might be in between the conversation that insights occur, and might be when we speak next. But for now,
yeah,
I think we're there.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Honestly, it's like just opening it up, exploring it, letting it, giving it space to be. Yeah. That's what I think allows motion and flow and new energy to move from it. So I feel good about that.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks for bringing a gift to everyone who's listening, because we all go through this in different ways. And you being this open and honest gives me a chance to as well, and gives anyone who's listening and watching a chance to reflect in that way as well. Thanks, Garrison.
Yeah. Thanks, Rich.
For most of human history, It wasn't called coaching. It was called leadership. And it's what I love to do, to coach people, to lead people, and to mess with people's thinking. If you'd like more of this, or if you'd like to learn more about our community of extraordinary top performers, go to richlitvin.com/oneinsight.